been less than 3 years since Labor got into government, and it kind of doesn't feel that long, does it? I mean, but despite the global economic turmoil, I think we've entered this new relaxing era of Australian domestic politics in that I don't feel visceral, spine-tingling annoyance looking at the Liberal Party leader. And because of that, and despite ruining your YouTube algorithm whinging about the Libs every week, I still feel like I've kind of allowed myself to forget how f***ed it is when the Liberals are in government. So, I'm trying not to be complacent like I was in 2019 when instead of filming the earth-shattering expose I had on ScoMo's Hillsong connections to the JFK assassination at MK Ultra, I thought, nah, fuck it. Shorten's got this one in the bag. And filmed a beer review instead. Unfortunately, I don't have dirt anywhere near as good on Dutton as I did on ScoMo, but I did make this video about his strange connections to a Queensland car dealership last election, which appeared to result in the withdrawal of an LNP candidate connected to the story. That's your Patreon dollars at work. So this time around, I thought, let's just wait for my vape review until after the election, eh? I think we already know what's going to win. And instead, let's go through some of the highlights of Dutton's boring, nasty little career to get a better idea of the man who could be Prime Minister. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Both Dutton and Albanese's pre-politics lives are pretty unimpressive. Both were members of the young branches of their respective political parties. Both graduated high school. Did you know that? Got into boring business and economics degrees. Except it was only Albo who didn't fail his degree. Not that I give a shit that Dutton doesn't have his business degree. He clearly didn't need one. I mean, look at how well he's done in the property game and the stock market by himself. But in the same year that he failed uni, Dutton also had a failed run at a seat in Queensland Parliament. So he decided instead to make a real difference in society, giving cunts breathalyzer tests. That's right, he became a cop. The year was 1989. The town, Queensland. Oh wait, that's not a town. But it was a heady time. Pineapple stocks were on the rise. Turner and Hooch came out in the cinemas, and I'm sure it aired up there. But understanding the significance of that time in Queensland, in relation to Dutton trying to become a Queensland LNP politician and subsequently a Queensland cop, is pretty useful to understanding the man. Queensland politics had just been rocked by a huge corruption scandal, instigated by the 1987 Four Corners investigation, The Moonlight State. Honestly, the only thing the ABC has ever done that was worth the public investment, in my opinion. Other than, of course, that show with that fucked faceless doll. Look at it! It's scarier than Chucky! It looks like it's about to kill him. But it was an investigation that implicated basically the entire Queensland government and police in running protection rackets for illegal casinos and prostitution rings. Oh wait, sorry, I forgot we live in 2020 woke. Illegal chance parlours and sex worker rings. Am I still cancelled? But look, political correctness isn't important. What is important is that Four Corners used to start with 5 minutes of uncensored strippers dancing to Prince. Pretty impressive feat. Like if it was 2 minutes, I'd say, well done. 3 minutes, I'd think, God, you're pushing your luck. But 5 minutes, that's longer than most lap dances. Hats off to you, Chris Masters. Honestly, it's far more impressive than that whole Ben Robert-Smith expose. Nowadays, if something that awesome went to air, it'd be the subject of a Four Corners in itself. Or it'd sweep the Oscars. In response to that Four Corners, the Fitzgerald Inquiry was established to investigate just how lucky and sex-positive the cosmetically conservative Queensland National Party government and the police actually were. And it turns out, very. The commission resulted in the prosecution and convictions of 4 government ministers and the Queensland Police Commissioner Terry Lewis, who was convicted for taking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bribes from brothels and casinos. Premier Jobioki Peterson got tried for perjury, but wasn't convicted due to a hung jury. Oh, and the jury foreman was a young National. And although the coalition between the Liberals and Nationals had been broken in 1983 owing to some gay little spat and the flexibility afforded to Jobioki Peterson thanks to his incredible gerrymander, the Liberals were part of this milieu. 2 of them switched over to the Nationals in 1983, and until then, they had governed Queensland with the Nationals as the junior coalition partner since 1957. And after 1983, a former Liberal, Don Lane, was given a ministry. He was eventually jailed for misappropriating public funds. Point of all that is, 1989 to 1990, pretty crazy time for Dutton to get involved with not just the Queensland Liberals, but the Queensland Liberals and the Queensland Police. Just the police or just the Libs, I would understand. But the 2 institutions that had just been found to be entrenched with decades of corruption, a wide-eyed 19-year-old Dutton saw his future in both. Like being a boomer in the 60s going to a Doors concert and getting inspired by the police standing on the stage. Look, I'm not at all saying Dutton was to blame for any of the Bioki-era insanity, and who knows? Maybe he wanted to reform the police and, at that point, the fractured coalition. But, again, come on, as a 19-year-old, when you're supposed to be listening to Prince at strip clubs, not trying to get into the government and police who run the strip clubs. So yeah, after failing uni, failing to win his seat in the 1989 Queensland election, Dutton becomes a cop. And yeah, don't really care about that era of Dutton's life. Way to blow it, Dutt. He apparently didn't do anything interesting during his time with the force. No brothel money, no secret casinos, nothing fun that we know of at all. Is this really the type of man we want as Prime Minister? Because if Albo was a cop in the 80s, he absolutely would have been like a Scorsese film set at Bar Italia Leichhardt. What do you mean I'm funny? Am I like, ha ha, funny, or are you just laughing at my lisp? So let's fast forward a decade to when Dutton starts buying up properties and successfully runs for the seat of Dixon for Queensland LNP. The media, Dutton's political opposition, and his allies alike, they all love to make this big deal about how he's apparently hardline to immigrants and criminals. You know, they always say shit like, Dutton plays divisive politics, or he's a hard man. And yes, sometimes it does feel like God gave him alopecia to complete this image. But really, to me, this just seems like a cover for the much more banal fact that he's a rudderless, unremarkable career politician like every leader the Liberals have had since maybe Gorton. That man had a lot of swag. You got it when you're that ugly.
I don't think he's that ugly.
Just hang on. Just open up the picture that's on the script.
Oh.
Like take for instance his maiden speech, held up as this foreboding ideological blueprint for Dutton's hard right Australia. It really doesn't say anything apart from thanks mum, thanks dad, and crime exists, which really does sum up his political ideology. Speaking of, let's examine what he actually has done as a politician, not what he says. He got his first portfolio in the Howard government in 2004 as Minister for Workforce Participation. As you'll soon see, a pattern emerges. Dutton didn't really do much in his role apart from virtue signal. He called for a national ID card to combat terrorism, which, fuck, if only we got that ID bill. Next time there's a suicide bomb attack, they won't be able to detonate the vest without showing a mall cop their ID. There you go. Finally a good reason for you trumpeter patriots seems to oppose him. If any of you actually exist and aren't all bots. But also though, this is bread and butter Dutton. He is obsessed with cop red tape. The most piss-weak, moralising about crime and terrorism. That's all he does. I'd respect it so much more if he just had the creativity of Bob Catter. Actually came up with some funny outbursts like he did when he was talking about youth crime.
All of my life, if some cheeky little mongrel that was completely out of control said to me that, I'd smack him in the mouth. And if you think I am promoting violence, no.
Well, I'm glad he clarified that. How much more would you like Dutton's scary police state values if you delivered it with that pizzazz instead of, I think we should divert all development and research into creating the real RoboCop and then we can make a lot of savings by gutting the entire AFP. I volunteer to be him. My precision doesn't need any upgrading. That's already perfect. With Dutton, it's always bland and fake. Yet we fall for it every time. Then if you look at the other shit that he's proposed as Minister for Workforce Participation, prepare to be even more disappointed. Proposing to force single parents on benefits to look for work once their youngest child is at school, because now they've got free time. Proposing to force disabled people off their pensions and into work, because as we all know, if you're a wheelie, you are perfectly suited to a desk job. After his great success in this portfolio, Dutton briefly became Assistant Treasurer before the Libs were thrown out of government in 2007. Before the 2010 election, he tried to switch seats from his marginal Dixon seat to the safe seat of McPherson on the Gold Coast, where he didn't live. It didn't work out. He still won Dixon anyway, which really shows his constituents that he's got no loyalty at all to them. You keep that in mind, Dixon. Even he doesn't want you. And can you blame him? Blah, 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 he was Shadow Health Minister. Then in 2013, when the Libs took office, he became Sunlight Health Minister, or Real Health Minister. And this is really where you can mark the beginning of the decline of Medicare, because he proposed the $7 co-payment on GP visits. When that faced huge backlash, instead, he just cut Medicare anyway. Just in a sneakier way. Now, before the Liberals got in 2013, Labor froze the Medicare rebate temporarily, and this is always used by dishonest actors as a Labor's just as bad point, but it was perfectly justified. It was to align indexation with financial years. Dutton had no justification. He just extended this until the Liberals were forced to take them off for COVID. This ripped billions and billions of dollars out of Medicare. Doesn't stop there though. Dutton also tried to rip $50 billion out of hospitals. These cuts were only stopped by Malcolm Turnbull, which really should tell you something about the extremity of Dutton's anti-Medicare ideology. Outflanking a guy who was so bad that the very concept of Medicare campaigns needed to be invented for him. And I know this is still the subject of some debate, but I don't care. Still going to recite this propaganda point anyway. He was voted worst health minister in 35 years in a poll by Australian Doctor magazine, otherwise known as Dolly. So yeah, That's Dutton's record in his first big role as a real minister. Workforce participation doesn't count. Sounds like a DEI job if you ask me. Literally the worst, according to an online poll. But hey, if online polls are good enough for Elon Musk, the world's greatest gamer, who Dutton seems to be quite inspired by, good enough for me! But it was at the end of 2014 that Dutton really got his chance of virtue signal. He was made Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. He got to make a huge deal about turning back a few dozen boats at the same time, opening the floodgates to record net migration. So I don't know why I expected him to be loyal to his electorate when he's not even loyal to his own self-styled image. But he was loyal to his mates. You gotta give him that. During his time as Immigration Minister, do you remember this? He was busted using ministerial powers to grant tourist visas to au pairs that had their visas cancelled after he got called up by people that the au pairs were going to work for. People who happened to include a man closely related to Liberal Party donors and a former Queensland police colleague. Mateship. Classic Aussie value. I remember because I didn't know what au pairs were before the scandal. Still don't. Didn't bother to look it up. The point is, don't expect him to reduce immigration if he wins. He's already making promises to immigration agent donors behind closed doors. I mean, I would too if the immigration queen walked up to me with a royal decree. At least he's holding to his value of being a monarchist. But if we really want to understand Dutton, we've got to look at his time as Minister for Home Affairs. He was actually pretty good in that role. He upped funding for Grindr by 20%, put in seed funding for Charlie XCX, secured a stake in Brat for the Australia Future Fund. I don't know, what else is gay? Baz Luhrmann? Apparently not. Him and his wife don't sleep in the same bed though. Sounds like a job for the Australian Homo Affairs, am I right? I know I've made that joke before, but come on. Minister for Homo Affairs? Makes me laugh. Anyway, the actual Department of Home Affairs, Dutton and this little greaser bureaucrat called Mike Pizzullo were agitating to create this super department that would take basically all of Australia's federal law enforcement agencies like the AFP, Department of Immigration, etc., put them all under one umbrella. And in 2017, they got their way, with Dutton being made the inaugural minister of the new department and Pizzullo as secretary. And look, we could go into the AFP's sudden eagerness to go hard after whistleblowers that arose after Dutton got a hold of them, but I understand this is a cost of living election, so who cares? Talk about bread. So instead, let me recount some facts about the outlandish amount of taxpayer money Dutton's department gave to seedy contractors. There was Paladin, a contractor based out of a hut on Kangaroo Island. They got $500 million worth of contracts to do security on Manus Island Detention Centre, a company that at the time had just $50,000 of share capital. Anyway, this company sucked up a giant profit margin of 22.5%, much higher than the industry standard. They were fined over 1,000 times for not doing what we were paying them to do. It's not just Paladin though, according to former ASIO boss Dennis Richardson, who was appointed head an inquiry into contracts awarded by Home Affairs, mostly during Dutton's reign. Home Affairs had contracts with companies suspected of corruption, bribery, arms smuggling, drug smuggling, and sanction busting. And guess what? Hardman Dutton didn't do shit to investigate any of it. One of the more interesting Home Affairs contractors was a little-known Papua New Guinea-based company called NKW Holdings. Home Affairs was paying them $1,400 a day per asylum seeker that they were looking after. And coincidentally, this company had a bunch of business with another really strange company, and I can't describe them, but if you look behind me, you'll see Peter Dutton. What's he doing in an ad for a now defunct Queensland car company that was doing business with a PNG-based detention centre contractor that was getting contracts from Dutton's department? Confounding. And that's where I'm going to call it this video, because I'm going to be re-uploading the video that examines that question, and I'd really like your help in answering it. So go watch the old video on Dutton. Help me get double the ad rev. There's probably more I could say about Dutton's career, but come on, do you need any more convincing? I think this limited sample of hits really does establish his ideological void and the transactions that come to fill it. In his entire career, there hasn't been one area of policy where his purported principles win over the desire of the elites. And in that sense, it really is perfect that he joined the cops and the Liberals when he did. He's continuing that great Queensland tradition of pretending to be trad while secretly running a brothel. A metaphorical brothel. I need to repeat that because we all know how much he likes to sue.